Hi, Rust programming language has gained quite a bit of attention from developers to even the common people because of its few features that makes it stand out. While learning Rust, one of the important topic is generics and traits. So in the previous video, we have seen what generics is in Rust, how to read and understand generics. We also saw some examples and we even learned how to use generics in enums, methods, and how code performance is affected by generics. Now, this is a continuation part of that. Now, here we'll see how to define a trait, how to implement a trait using an example. So, what is a trait? A trait defines functionality of a particular type that has and can share with other types. It means that a trait has a particular functionality and this trait can be implemented on a type and it can be shared over multiple types. So to put it in simple terms, traits is nothing but it defines how shared behavior works. So there is another concept called trait bounds and we use this to specify that a generic type can be any type that has certain behavior. So let us first see how to define a trait. So let's take an example that there's a news article and a tweet. And the news article has a couple of parameters like headline, location, author, content. And the tweet has certain parameters like username, content, whether it's a reply or a retweet. So these two bools represent whether it's a reply or a retweet. So let's say that we have to summarize both of these articles. Let us say, let us say what these two articles share in common. One is the news article and another one tweet. Both of them have to be summarized. That is a task that is given to us. So while we're coding, how can we do this better? That is where trait come into a picture. So we can define a trait like this. We can say it's public and we can say it's a trait. And here we give the name of the trait, that is summary, because the task that we're given is to summarize the news article as well as the tweet. So summary, and within curly brackets, we need to define a method. So we'll say function summarize ampersand self, return type is string. So this trait, which is called summary, has a method which is going to return the type string. So we can implement this trait on news article and tweet or any other type to get that particular task done. That is where traits come into picture. So let us see how to implement a trait on a type. So here we have the news article with parameters like location, headline, author, content, and we can implement a block which says implement summary for news article. This basically means that for this type, the news article, we're going to implement the trait summary. So within curly brackets, we would write function summarize ampersand self string. This method that we talked about earlier, we call this method and we say that the format is going to be self.headline, self.author, self.location. So what it is going to return is the headline, author, and location. This is going to be the summary for the news article. Similarly, for the tweet, we can say it's going to return username and content. These two parameters are going to be present in the string that this method is returning. So here we have defined how the summary works. Here we're calling the summary. Here we have defined the summary. By this, I mean we have only mentioned the signature of the trait, but not the body, because in this particular section. That is because we want wherever we implement this particular trait on the type, we want the type to define the parameters that it wants as a part of that summary. So this is how we implement a trait on a type. So, okay, let us say that only when I call upon the summary trait on this type, it's going to summarize and give me, and the summary is going to tell us exactly what we need in the summary. That is, we need headline, author, and location in case of the news article. But in case of tweet, we specifically mention that we need username and content. Let us say we do not want this to be the case, and we want summary trait itself to implement something by default. So, in case I don't want to specify what should be summarized in the tweet, I want the summary trait itself to have a default uh, parameter that it is going to return. So that is the next part, which is default implementation. When such is the condition, I could extend the trait and write it as this method is going to return something called as read more. So by default, whenever I implement the trait summary on the types, by default it is going to return as this string. That is the default implementation part of implementing a trait on a type. So how do we exactly implement that? Here we have the news article with its parameters, and we have the tweet with its parameters. So what we're going to do here is tweet is going to define what exactly it wants, which is the username and the content. But the trait summary is going to have a default value, which is read more. Read more is the string that it is going to return. So when in my implementation block for news article, I do not mention anything specifically in the parenthesis, we will be able to see that when we implement the summary trait on the news article, it is going to return as a string which says read more. But this default is overridden by the tweet, because tweet specifically mentions that as a part of its summary, it needs username and content. So at situations where we specifically mention what we need as a part of the trait, the default of the trait is overridden by whatever we have mentioned. But in this implementation block for the news article, we have not mentioned what we need. In such case, the default is going to be what is printed. The string that's going to be returned is going to be the read more string. So there is another tweak to this, that is, default implementations can also call other methods inside our trait definition. Here we have the news article with its parameters and tweet article with its parameters. Here we can see for tweet, nothing has changed. It is still going to summarize. When we implement the summarize trait on the tweet, it is going to just return as the username and the content. But in the summary, we have mentioned that not only the default string that it by default it is going to, okay, basically we have two parameters. One is summarize author, another one is summarize. So in summarize, it is going to return this particular string, which is read more from. And inside this, we are calling the method that is self summarize author, self.summarize author. So this particular method, the summarize author, is being called inside the definition of summarize. So when I implement this particular trait summary on the tweet, on the news article, because I've not mentioned anything, by default it is going to tell me read more from, and it is going to call summarize author inside it. So the author of this particular news article will also be printed. That is how we can use implementation blocks to call methods inside the trait definition. So these are the concepts that I wanted to discuss today. In the following video, we'll also see a little bit more about traits. There we'll see how to use trait bounds and how we can specify multiple trait bounds, and how we can return types that implement traits, and also use how to use trait bounds to implement on methods. Thank you.